Welcome to Music Maker's Cookbook, the podcast that helps independent artists cook up recipes for success in the music industry. I'm Sean.
I'm Brandon.
Yeah, we got Brandon back today. Woo!
Yeah.
Fortunately, last episode,
Yeah.
I had to go solo because we have too much fun together.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. None of us, we were both here last Wednesday, and Sean just tuned his room with SonarWorks. If you're not familiar with SonarWorks, it helps tune your speakers to your room and helps try to flatten your response on your speakers as best as possible so you get a truer response to what you're hearing, so it translates a little bit better into the world. Sean has these wonderful JBL LSR 32s.
Yep.
He tuned them and he had me sit down. And Sean was right to say this. He said, I was going to wait until the end. And that Sean should have done that. He should have done that because right when I heard those speakers, I was just in awe. I think we listened to probably 7 different songs last week.
If not more.
If not more.
And it wasn't like, okay, next song, like you would normally think of listening. It was listen to, replay, analyze, go back to this part.
Drink coffee, repeat. You know, because Sean made me a specialty coffee that he has.
I did.
Which was also awesome. And honestly, we just spent the time listening to music and then looking up stuff about power amps and nerding out about that.
Yep.
And by the next thing we knew, it was 12:30 and we had to depart. So we were here.
It was such an enjoyable experience that the next time we record at Brandon's studio, you were going to find the same speakers in his studio.
It was 100% that enjoyable. I went on immediately on Facebook Marketplace, and by the grace of Facebook, they had a pair up there, and for $11.50, I got them for $9.50. Happy day. Happy day. And went and picked them up that same exact day. Like, not even, it was the same day. Yeah. It was literally just like 8 hours later. So they're now in my studio.
That's once again, I'm glad to have you back, Brandon.
Thank you. It's nice to be back. It's nice to be back.
We made the mistake of not pressing record before we just nerded out and talked about it because, it could have been something. But anyways, speaking of nerding out and things about that, at the beginning of every single podcast episode, we have a question that we ask each other, and we also ask you to give us your feedback and answer the question in the comments on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you are watching the podcast. And today's big one is, what are some common mistakes that artists make that can't be fixed later? So things that we've experienced in the studio or live even. It could be very, very broad. Anything that maybe mistakes you've made yourself that just could not be fixed after the fact. We've got a couple of them. Yeah. And then the last one we're going to talk about is the main topic of this episode. So stick around for that. But first off, Brandon, what's yours?
We were kind of discussing this beforehand, and I had mentioned that I think energy is a big one. And what I mean by that is energy within the take itself. So whether you're doing vocals, guitar, whatever, you're not putting your full effort into it. Or not even maybe the case of that, but you're just not matching the energy that is within the song. And that's really hard to do when you're in a more sterile environment like a recording studio. Easier to do when you're live because you get all the energy based off the crowd, based off the venue, the nervousness, right? Recording studio is almost a kind of different kind of nervousness, and people tend to be maybe a little bit more reserved the less experienced they are. And that is probably one of the worst places to do it because everything that's captured within that microphone is exactly what's happening within your performance. And the reason why I think this is the hardest part is because I'll have sometimes people send me some stuff or we'll listen back to a recording and it's like, hey, do you think you could fix this? It's like, okay, what are we fixing here? And it's like, oh, can you make me sound more energetic? It's like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. Like we can do certain things with compression and stuff where we have maybe a slower attack, a fast release, and we're just pressing the fuck out of that compressor. I'm thinking of 1176 and you get a nice snappy transient. The cadences sound really nice, but that only does so much and you can only go so far with it. You can't tune it. You can't fix it, right? You can't time edit it to make it sound more energetic. You're just stuck with the take that's imparted upon the recording. And you see this in all over. I'm thinking mainly vocals right now, but I'm even thinking guitar tracks, right? So if you are pussy picking on a guitar and the guitar is supposed to be very energetic and very in your face, you're going to just get a warbly mess of nothing. And then you can't fix that. And you certainly can't run it through an amplifier to fix it and get it to sound more energetic because then that's when it really becomes a fucking mess, undefined, just terrible sounding, right? So I would say that is the biggest thing is not imparting the correct amount of I keep going back to effort. It's not effort, but the amount of oomph or energy into the take itself.
Yeah, and no matter what the instrument may be, something that I tell artists that come in all the time is that I can fix timing issues.
Yeah.
We can vocal comp to get a better part.
Yep.
And like make the best take that never happened. We can pitch this. We can time align that. We can add these effects to add more energy to the recording.
Yep.
To get that overall atmosphere, that build up, that energy cohesive throughout the whole mix.
Right.
But what I cannot do is make you give more of a shit.
Right.
Like
Yep.
I can't make you care more in the recording than you did when you sang it. So whether it be a slow song or a sad song, emotional song,
Yep.
I can't make you feel the words more when
Right.
the recording's done.
Yep.
I can't. If it's an energetic song where you're really good, it's happy, it's hyper, it's energetic. I can't make you have more energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
after
Exactly.
you record it.
Exactly.
So yeah, that is a great example of something that just cannot be fixed in post. You can't make you give more of a shit.
Exactly. You have to re-record it at that point. And, so this, you can fix it later on, but that's re-recording everything. And that's a total time suck. So you might as well try to get it right up front and have an open, honest conversation with your producer, engineer, or if you're doing it yourself, get some good perspective on it and maybe even take a break from it if you think you're not hitting the energy correctly. But yeah, have to have the right energy because that's, like Sean was saying, that's something we just can't fix later on. Just can't do it. Just can't do it.
My answer for that question, if you don't mind me
ready.
just kind of
Please,
jumping right
please.
into it, is something that in some regards can be fixed later, but it's never the same. And that is documenting kind of the process.
Yeah.
When documenting the process, there are two reasons you might want to do this. One of them is being for like creation of the content. So like behind the scenes, videos, photos, notes, just things that you are creating while you're in the studio that are valuable to your fan base. That
Absolutely.
they want to be, involved in, something you can keep posting to get people hyped and engaged for when the release comes. You want to have stuff releasing consistently up until your release because you want to build that hype so that people are aware that there's going to be new music coming out when it comes out. Very few artists can just do a drop.
Right.
Where it's just dead silent.
Right.
Music and everyone freaks out. Very few artists can do that. So awareness is a huge issue when there are hundreds of thousands of songs being released yearly and tens of thousands being released daily. So yeah, that is a big thing that can't really be done after the fact.
Yep.
But then also for documenting the things that worked. Brandon brought this up when we were doing our pre-talk is like, hey, really liked how this guitar sounded. Well, how did we get that guitar sound that way? What instruments did we use? What strings did we use? Were they old strings? Were they new ones? Really like this vocal tag. Like, what did I do the night before?
Yeah.
Did I not drink alcohol? Did
Right.
I have like potato chips that are something very oily? Like what happened to help get to that location? Did you get a full 8 hours worth of sleep? Things like that can be good to have documented so that way when it comes time to go back in the studio or do something later, if that's something you want to repeat, you're able to follow those steps.
Yep.
And the further time goes on, the harder it is to think back and remember the details that are there, which is why something that you can't really do after the fact. It's something that has to happen during the process.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great example. The show The Bear. I've told you to watch it before. It's a great show. I love that show. We might even do a podcast episode about a specific episode eventually. It's on the docket. We have it written down because we wanted to document it. See, but on one of the episodes, one of the chefs on there, she's making a new recipe, and she's doing all these iterations. But as she's going, she's writing down, oh, I took it off at 5 minutes. Oh, I took it off at 4 minutes. Oh, I took it off at 4 minutes, 30 seconds, right? Each time the iteration is different to try to get the formula correct. So that way she can always refer back to it and reverse engineer it and get it the exact same way, or at least within like 5% error, right? The same thing. And it's a repeatable thing, right? So like that's what we're kind of talking about. Make sure everything's repeatable. So if you want to capture that magic again, right? If you want it to sound very similar, like between albums, same guitar string. So like if, let's say you're using Diodario NYXLs, right? Write that down and make sure you know exactly which gauge you're using on what guitar, and maybe even go to the cable, right? So like just make sure that what you're documenting along the way is in a safe space so you can refer back to it, because a lot of the time us as humans, we like to inflate some things, right? And we might misremember some things, right? So it's important to write these down within the moment so that way we can refer back to them and ground ourselves, but also set expectations for ourselves and then also make it a repeatable thing. And what was the first point again that you made? It was, documenting. Yeah, I mean, if you're in a studio, two birds, one stone. Not only are you recording and being productive, but man, that's going to look so good on socials. And if you're not taking advantage of that extra marketing, extra proof, social proof, then, oh man, you're doing a disservice to yourself because you can really like milk the shit out of recording sessions if you can.
Oh yeah, especially if you're going to anything other than an entry-level studio. Even that entry-level studio, like, it has its own vibe to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most studios out there are purpose-built to capture a specific vibe that helps the artist. And if you're the artist that is recording there, their vibe probably decently similar to your vibe. And so there's cohesion there visually that you can then put out there on your social.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So very, very helpful.
Definitely got to take advantage of that when you can.
Yeah.
And Sean said that there is some leniency, and I think what Sean meant by that is that you can go back into the studio and kind of take pictures if you wanted to.
Yes.
But then that requires maybe paying a little bit more. So you might want to do that up front. So kind of like the caveat to mine is also the caveat to yours. Yeah, sure, you could do this later on, but the magic's gone, and now you're paying double of what you really needed to at that point. So
yeah, if you want those studio pics, but you're not recording the studio, you have to pay to get back in the studio.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
And it's not as authentic.
It's not,
and that's what really matters. Once again, kind of like in performing, can't make you give a damn.
Right.
In the photos, it's hard to fake.
Yeah, it's very hard
the
to
magic.
fake. It is. Yeah. It is 100%. So
yeah. And the third thing that artists often make mistakes on that can't be fixed in post, that we're going to be really diving deep into today, is project and task management.
Boo.
Yeah, it's something like once the project's done, you can't go back and fix it. You can't go back and do the things that you needed to do to set you up to where you need to be at a later point after that time is gone. That was very redundant.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. Project management and task management is extremely difficult to us creatives for one reason or another. A lot of the time, shiny object syndrome kind of gets in the way, and that can either be a gear thing, like I have an issue with, that maybe Sean and I have an issue with. We like it. We like gear.
Yeah.
Or it could be also a song thing where you keep writing songs, you don't finish any fucking songs, but you have a bunch of half-written songs.
Raise your hand if you're guilty of that.
Same. Seriously. It's very difficult for us. And it's even more difficult, too, when you're excited about a song. Let's say you actually finish a song, you get it recorded and everything. You go want to put it out right away and with release dates and stuff. And then all of a sudden
marketing,
you're not hitting
promotion,
Yep.
All those that go into it.
And you put your front foot forward too far, and then you miss the release date that you originally said, right? So, like, there's a lot of things that kind of go into this project management and task management that we kind of have like a nice hierarchy that Sean has brought to the table to kind of look at this and frame it if you have trouble with this sort of thing. And of course, there's a lot of apps out there that can help. And of course, they're going to all want you to try them out, right? So
what system works to do this. This will fix your problems forever. This will fix your problems forever.
Exactly. So you really have to figure out what works for you and what exactly you're looking for in an app. And like maybe I can give an example later of what I thought about on the way here. But yeah, it's really difficult, man. This could be a whole series of something,
for sure. And there's books and series all about it. Something that you just said made me think about the book, The E-Myth Revisited.
Yeah. It's been a while since I read that, but it's a great book.
It's a good one.
It's a great book.
And it talks about the kind of three different pillars, three different in a business that gets it to fully function. Well, this is the music business. You are an artist that is running your own business. That's what this is. And the three different personality types that he brought up is the entrepreneurial mindset, which we're going to kind of frame as the creative mindset, that has the ideas for all of it. The managers in the business that schedule everything and make sure all the tasks stay on task. And then the technician, the person that actually does the tasks. And the technician is always fighting with the manager because the technician wants to make sure it's done right when the manager wants to make sure it's done quick and on time. And then the manager is always fighting with the entrepreneur because the entrepreneur has all these crazy ideas, all these things that want to get done, is super creative, but the manager's like, there's not enough time for all of this.
Yep.
And then the technician is always fighting. The entrepreneur is always fighting with the technician, because the technician is like, nope, this is how it's done. This is how it's always been done. But the entrepreneur is like, no, let's try this. Let's do this. Let's do this creative thing. That same cycle happens in every single project.
Very much so. At many different points.
At many different points. And that's really, as you mentioned, like a lot of times when you're creative, when you are that entrepreneur mindset or that creative mindset, and you have all these things you want to try, having that personal discipline to manage it and be technical with it. It's very hard to have all three of them at once when it's just you, unless you have a system down.
Yeah.
So there are tons and tons of different systems that exist out there, which is what you were saying with the whole apps things and whatnot. If you are in a band or in a group, you can divide and conquer, say, okay, well, basically this is going to be the creative guy.
Yeah.
He's the head of it. We can all be creative, but he's the head of it. This is the manager guy. He's really good at that. So he's going to be the head of that.
Yep.
And then this is the technical guy. He's the guy who, there's always one in a band who loves the gear side of it. Like, hey, we need to use these microphones for live. These are like talking to the guy in the studio about what kind of stuff he wants to get done. So it can be helpful to have separate people, because when it's all on you, it's a lot.
Yeah, you got to wear all three hats at once.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what we're going to be doing today is kind of, at least the approach I want to take to
Yes.
it. I think Brandon has some other ideas that he wants to elaborate on, which I'm really looking forward to talking about. Your side of it.
Yeah.
But the way I'm thinking about it is kind of taking, okay, well, what are tasks? What are projects that need to be managed, and breaking them down into their most bare bones categories that allows you to then kind of go through and organize it just incredibly simply every day about what tasks do I need to do, where do they belong, and what specific things need to be done. So
Yeah.
if you have anything else to say, I'm just going to kind of
jump right in, please.
All right.
I'm looking forward to it, because I can definitely refine my process in the way that I think about things too.
Same.
So I'm definitely looking forward to it. Absolutely. Same. Yeah.
So this kind of basic breakdown that I'm going to be talking about, I kind of took inspiration from the podcast ADHD, ADD Tips and Support podcast.
That's a good one. I should probably listen to that. Seriously.
Yep. They had
I didn't even know that was a thing.
It is a thing. And they had a specific one about project management that I'm like, that's me. I'm going to go listen to that. I'm going to check in on that. And the way they broke it down made a lot of sense. And that's kind of where I'm going to be regurgitating to all of you guys, since I know a lot of artists that are kind of just all over the place. That's just how it is.
Yep.
So the major thing is categories. Within categories, there are projects, and within projects, there are action items. Those are the only three things you really need to know in order to effectively project manage. Now, whatever system you implement, be it SMART goals, be it rocks and sprints, be it a calendar app, however you end up doing it, whatever works for you. But those are the three things that are the fundamentals of project management. And if you start off just focusing on these three things every day, it'll get you going further than you would be without it. So the first one is categories.
Yep.
Now, they broke it down into 9 different categories, which are the overall umbrella that all the projects then fit underneath. So, for example, the first category is health. So it's what things you need to do to have proper health, good health in your life. The next one is work. Like, what are all the things that you have to do for work, those tasks, those projects. Then finances, a home, relationships, creative expression, which is, hey, that's what we are, fun and travel, spiritual mindfulness, and then the last one is service. Those are the 9 pillars of just kind of like an overall balanced life that all projects fall under one of those major categories. So when you think of something that you need to do, write it down and then figure out, okay, well, what category does this exist in? Now, it's incredibly hard to do everything at once. We just talked about the 3 hats of creativity, management, and technician. Now we're talking about the 9 hats of living a healthy, balanced life.
Yep. All of a sudden, that's exponential.
Yeah. You can't. You're going to be picking 1 or 2 in every season, which we have a podcast episode about the seasons of life. And that these relate to that, as in, like, where are you within the season of this category that you are focusing on at this point of your life. But within that, within each category are the projects that are within each category are the projects.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and a project is the bucket for all the action steps that are needed to achieve the results you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Don't confuse a project with the action item, which is the third thing, because the project is the overarching thing.
Yeah.
So the example that I've written down here is under creative expression, your music. You have the goal of to recording your song.
Yeah.
A lot of times you might think, oh, that's the action step. That's what I need to do next. I go and I record the song. That's a pretty intense thing to do.
It is.
And there's a lot of steps that go into it.
Yep.
So if your goal is to, I'm just going to record a song this week, where do you start?
Right.
You don't have the specific steps necessary to start. That's a project. That's not an action step. It's not just, I'm going to record today.
Yep.
So separate those. That is the project. Within the project are the action steps, the specific tasks that need to be done in order to then fulfill the project. So if the project for the week is, I'm going to record a song, the action steps within it are, okay, well then I need to make sure I have new strings on my guitar.
Yep.
That is action step number 1. Then I got to tune the guitar. I'm going to practice the song for the next 2 days or whatever. That is an action step. And that's even that can be potentially too broad. Like I got to practice tonight and tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Make sure I block that off, set time aside for that, and then pack it all up. If you're going to a studio, schedule the time. That's an action step. Set aside the funds in order to pay for it. That's an action step.
It's a big one.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Get a good night's rest the night before.
That's another big one.
That's an action step. So you see, like the more in the weeds you get, there are individual things you specifically have to do that go up to recording your song.
Yeah. I think Sean demonstrated this really well, especially not having the ability to do visuals, because like once you start writing this down and start kind of seeing it in front of you, it becomes a lot easier to kind of filter through. However, Sean also demonstrated another thing. This can get very intense very quickly. Like I'm talking like storyboard kind of thing, and you're trying to connect the dots and your hair's sticking up, right?
Like the scene from It's Always Sunny.
Exactly that. Because even if you were to take, let's say, the guitar thing, right? I'm going to make my guitar sound the best that I can for the day of recording. That's cool. But all of a sudden, when you frame it like that, that's a project, right? What does that mean? Well, that means changing the strings. That means intonating the guitar, setting it up properly. I'm talking strain and relief on your neck. I'm talking your saddles and your bridge, right? I'm talking make sure if you need to go into do a Faraday cage within your within your electronics, you got to do that because if you don't want buzz. If you have to wax pot your pickups because you have microphonic pickups, you got to do that. So and then you have to shave a new nut because this one sits the string incorrectly, and now you're all out of tune, and all of a sudden this becomes a massive endeavor. So how you split this up?
Just because I want to, can I just say a really weird one that people might not think about?
Please.
Goes for preparation for recording guitar.
Yeah.
For recording acoustic guitar and you're doing like finger picking and you want clarity on your finger picks, you might have to say, okay, for the next 2 weeks, I'm not clipping my nails.
Yes, that's exactly
on my right hand or my left hand, whichever my picking hand is.
Exactly.
So that way it's some clarity to it. That takes pre-planning. That is an action step. If you cut your nails 2 days before going to the studio and you get to the studio and you're like, shit. It's not going to sound the way you want it to.
Yep, exactly.
So you're right. It gets very intense.
Very intense. And then all of a sudden, that action step of, hey, I got to prep the guitar for the recording session tomorrow becomes, I have a whole project I got to do here. Then you have to almost take that and put it in projects because those are all the action steps to get your guitar to set up right? Yeah. So this can get very, very in depth. It's just all about how you want to think about it and how you structure it. However, like I said, it's a lot easier to visualize. So if you're a very visual person like I am, write these down or have an app for it or something like that. And we'll talk about apps and all that stuff, I'm sure. But yeah, writing it down, and I think you did it beautifully because you were talking about it, and it's so hard to talk about it without seeing it. So I think you did a great job.
Appreciate that. Yeah, that's basically the fundamentals of all sorts of task management.
Yeah.
It is the breaking it down to its next actionable step. And we kind of talk about this within our SMART goals episode, within our 4 quadrants episode, within all of our episodes about different methods of planning. But this is the bare bones that it really comes down to. However you want to package it, however works for you.
Yep.
Just writing down, getting it out of your head and onto something that's concrete of this is what I want to achieve because this affects this part of my life, and these are all the things I need to do in this order to achieve that.
Yeah.
That's all
Absolutely.
it is.
That's what it is.
Three things.
At its very basic, bare bones.
That's project management.
Yep. That's
those
it.
three things.
Yep. It's very difficult to do because it relies on self accountability, you know, and also consistency. So if you have a routine built into some kind of project management where you're overseeing the project management, that can help out so much. Seriously. Sean and I have talked about it before on the episode. I've been way worse with this recently, but when I go downstairs, you know, into the studio for the first time of the day, I have the first two things I do: send off an invoice and do any revisions that I got overnight, because it'll be easy to knock those out, simple, quick wins. And then it's like, okay, project management from there. Well, so what's on my docket for today? What project do I have to get done today? Or what do I have to at least make substantial progress on? Then it's like, okay, what do I need to do to get there? Take a producing project, for example, since we're kind of talking about that, right? So let's go into maybe a production thing. I get sent a song. You get sent a song. And of course, we might do these differently at some point. So please chime in. Please chime in. But we get sent a song. We bring it into the session. We listen to it. Okay, what needs to be done first? There's no drums in here, so we got to do some kind of drums. How are we going to do those drums? Live, program, not sure, right? Whatever. That's our action step, right?
Yep.
Drums first, because you need a backbone to the song. So we're going to do that first, kind of knock it out first. But wait, hold on a second. We need to prep the project, right? So instead of just bringing it all in, the multi-tracks, we have to figure out the key and the BPM. Okay. Action step to get to the drums. All of a sudden, this is becoming. It's like, okay, what the fuck?
It's a weird thing.
It's very linear. You have to do it this way, and so that's kind of like sometimes how I approach project management. And I've used apps before. Not great with the apps. I feel like once it goes in my phone, it dies, unfortunately, a lot of the time. So I prefer writing things down so you can actually just see it.
Yeah, that physical piece.
Exactly.
That you get in that you can physically get in the habit of picking this up. This is where all my steps are.
Yep.
As you mentioned, like that's the first thing that you do. You go downstairs, you make sure you do the same tasks every morning, and then from there it's basically what projects do I have today?
Yep.
And then what action items do I need to get them done?
Exactly.
That's project management.
Yep. Right there.
That's the bare bones of it right there. So if you can start off, like just get in the habit of every day, or maybe around lunch, or maybe when you get home from work, just being like, okay, this is what I want to do. What do I need to do today?
Yep.
What is my action step today? And from there, write it down. And now you have a path that you can follow. That is like the most important thing to do, is just clarifying what are the next steps. What is there to get done?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Very difficult to do. Very difficult to do, especially for us creatives. Do you have any special tricks that you do? What is your method like in terms of like project management? Are you an app guy, or are you writing it down, or are you like a hybrid?
Right. I'm a hybrid. I've tried apps. I've tried calendar things. I've tried writing down all sorts of different things. But really, it's just the writing it down that does the best. Every week, every Monday, I get together with people that are involved in all the projects that I'm doing. So like for all the install stuff that I do, I'll get together with James, and we will plan the rest of our week. Okay, like what's in our docket this week? What are the projects we need to get done? And then once I have that list of what are both of our projects, I will then take it, and I will then go through my calendar. Okay, when am I available? Okay, then what tasks are involved for each project? So, okay, on these 2 days, I'm focusing on this project. And then on that day, I'll look at the project and I'll write down the tasks that are necessary in order to get that project done. Let's see if I have a sticky note.
Sticky notes. Love them.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of different sticky notes that have a bunch of different checklists. I love checklists.
Yep.
And I'll create sticky notes that are the action steps for each project. I'll label the project up top and then all the steps inside. And what I did was I bought a pack of, I think there's 6 different colors sticky notes.
Yeah.
And depending on what the project is, what category it falls into, I will use a different colored sticky note.
That's a good idea.
So if it's like podcast stuff, I'll use pink. If it's install, I'll use orange. If it's studio stuff, I have like a green one that I use. Obviously, I like green in the studio.
I
So
use
that's
green
kind of
for
how I
my
do it.
studio too for sticky
You
notes.
do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the moment, I do. Yeah.
Nice.
Easy to see.
Yeah.
Easy to see.
So that's kind of how I do it. At the beginning of the week, I'll list all my projects, and then on the day of, I will put down the tasks that are necessary within that project. And that helps me kind of stay on top
Helps
of it.
guide your day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your week.
Yeah.
Right. So I think a big thing that you said here is plan out things, right? Take that day, whether it's Sunday, the Saturday before, Monday, whatever it is, and set yourself up for success that week, right? And even if you work a full-time job where you work 10 hours a day and you want to get at least like 30 minutes of music in, just make sure you take that time and you plan out what you're going to do with that. Because if you get down, let's say you work in a basement like I do. Let's say you walk downstairs and you look at your guitar and you say, what do I want to practice today? Or what do I want to play today? Or do I want to record today? Well, all of a sudden you're eating up 5 minutes of just deciding what you want to do. And then you have to get into the mindset of like, okay, I want to record today. I got to fire everything up. I got to open up the software. I got to plug in my stuff. I got to obviously tune the guitar. And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, well, we just ate up a bunch of time. And it's like, okay, how can we make this more efficient, as well? And like that comes with a good project management, right? Yeah. Is saying, hey, I have to do these certain things to get in there. Maybe I need that extra 15 minutes today if I want to record. So if I only have 30 minutes, maybe I'll just practice today. Maybe I'll practice to a metronome and practice the song I'm going to record tomorrow and set myself up for success for tomorrow, right? It's very difficult to do because let's say I have a sticky note right now on my desk. I was in a session the other day. And I noticed Pro Tools kept having CPU spikes. I'm like, oh, great. So there's probably a plugin in there that's gone awry, right? And I don't pay to upgrade my plugins because I don't want to, right? So I'm like, it's probably a rogue plugin that's causing it. So I'm going to update all my stuff, all the stuff that's free, and then go from there and then kind of like work backwards. Well, I also had a virtual computer on my computer for a while because I had to get stuff from Windows, right? And so I'm like, okay, that's eating up a lot of space. I checked. It was eating up almost like 250 gigs of space. So I'm like, okay, it's slowing down my SSD now. Yeah. So I'm like, so I might be having some problems there. So now I'm writing this stuff down and gonna troubleshoot through it. This is my new project. My new project is to optimize my computer. Go back and listen to 2 episodes ago. Yep. And I had to literally sit down and do that. Optimizing my computer as a project. Here are the steps that I'm going to take to try to get to that optimization. So now I'm looking. I write down sticky notes. So I updated my Apollo. I updated my Apollo console software. I updated my plugins. No new Pro Tools updates, so I didn't need to do that. I deleted the virtual machine and cleaned out all the junk from my computer. So like from iMessage, it saves attachments. Get rid of those. Don't need them on the computer. Clear out my Adobe caches because my goodness, those eat up all the space in the world. And then clear out the virtual machine. Now all of a sudden I have 250 gigs more. I'm backed up to like about 600 gigs on the computer. So I'm like, okay, so we're running a little bit quicker already. And I'm like, my fans are turning on. So I'm like during a session, I'm like, it's probably the hang up is probably me streaming to my monitor inside of the vocal booth, right? And so now I got to kind of figure out something for that because I'm using my stuff. But I have all this written down. These are all my actionable steps that take up to lead to a better, more efficient, optimized computer. Now, I'm not great at this because at the same time, I'm also setting up new monitors, right? Because I have
it's just a different project.
It's just a different project.
It's just a different project. Right? You don't have projects.
And you're dipping your toes in all these kind of different things. And then on top of that, I have work I actually have to get done, right? And then now I'm like going into acoustic land. So all of a sudden, these projects are starting to align. But the funny part about some of these projects, and I think you'll probably agree with this, and I don't mean to take up so much time, but a lot of these projects will start to actually kind of coincide together. Like they'll start to link up like, oh, that's also here. So I need to get that done. So maybe this actionable task is twice as important as this one that will also lead me to this project. So now all of a sudden your priority list becomes a little different because if you can knock out, let's say you have to do, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Let's just say you have one task that falls under a project, right? And you have another task that falls under a different project, but they're the same task. Yeah. You can knock out 2 birds with 1 stone, and all of a sudden your productivity has 2-folded, just like that. That's twice as good, right? Because you knocked out 2 things under a project, under 2 different projects that you needed to do anyways. So now you'll start to see how these kind of develop a matrix, and now when you use apps, they'll have priority on there.
Yeah.
They'll say high, medium, low. Obviously, that's also dictated by time, but it could also be like, hey, like I have to do this in 2 different places. I might as well just get it the fuck done because this will allow me to take the next step to get those projects done.
Yeah,
So,
and that's what the whole like taking the time at the beginning of a week or a month or quarterly, yearly
Yeah.
of saying, okay, what are the big things that can get broken down?
yeah.
And that this is going into the large term,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, like
Yeah.
set a priorities list. That's more of that's an advanced part of task management thing. The 4 quadrants allows you to pick out
Exactly.
the
Great
priority
episode.
of things.
Great episode.
If you're going to go very broad, like SMART goals, okay, what are the large overarching things? And then the third thing of SMART goals is actionable. So it's like, okay, well, what are the tasks that are within that in order to
Right.
get that goal done, which is what these action items are. It all just gets broken down into what needs to be done next. And like the whole thing, like 2 birds and 1 stone thing, like an example of it is if you're running a home studio or whatnot, or a project studio to get your demos down. If your goal is to get better demo mixes and your other that's your first project, your second project is to get better recordings, an action item for both of them is acoustical treatment.
Man, is that a project?
Yep.
That's when an actual step
That's an
becomes a
actual step.
project. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, because inside
Yeah.
of that, it does.
Because now it's all
How do you get your how do you get your acoustical treatment? Do you build it? Do you buy it? What do you do? You got to hang it. What actionable steps behind that?
Yep.
So, and we've talked about similar things where it's layered. It's all layered.
It is. It can get very complex depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
And sometimes even the more minuscule you'll go, the easier it is to get you to that point a little bit quicker. Because I mean, you don't miss steps at that point. You think everything out very thoroughly, but it can also be very intimidating at the same time. So it really depends on how you want to structure it. But I think that's a great point because, man, that acoustic topic with that specific example is dense. Get it?
Yes, it is.
Dense.
Because acoustical foam.
Yes.
Roxwool, fiberglass, all that shit.
Yes. Safe and sound. Roxwool.
Safe and sound. That was a good pun.
Thanks. Yeah, tough. So, you said you might be an app guy. I just want to clear this up real quick and talk about apps just real quick. Apps often try to get your attention through marketing, right? So they're going to distract you from getting things done at some point. There's always a shiny new app. The intention is good behind the app, obviously. So once you pick an app, kind of stick with it. Maybe don't go looking out for a ton. But unfortunately, I'm not like that. I like looking for new apps. So are you an app guy at the end of the day? With project management?
I said I've tried for basic things like using the calendars, using like Motion, like AI calendars, things like that works well. But then at the same time, at the end of the day, it is that good old pen and paper.
Yeah.
And it's also having somebody else kind of involved, like the accountability can help as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like every Sunday, me and my girlfriend get together. We plan out our week together. We set a coffee date, and these are our projects. Here's what we're going to do.
Yep.
These days we're available. These days we aren't. Make sure both of our calendars line up. That's a form of project and task management. in
Absolutely,
itself.
it is.
But if you tell someone like, hey, on Thursday, I'm going to be I'm going to be practicing from 6 to 10, so don't bother me. And then Thursday comes along, and it's 7 o'clock and you're not practicing, you're on the couch, they can be like, hey, I thought you were going to be practicing.
Yeah.
So that accountability step is important too.
Yep.
There's so many small details here, but I feel like just thinking about it, bare bones, if you're getting overwhelmed, it's categories, projects, action items.
Yeah,
That's all you need to know. And then however system you have of implementing those things, just break it down into those and you will have the next steps needed.
Yeah. I think so too. I wanted to say real quick too, I think it's easier to do it like this on pen and paper too. Some of these apps I've used ClickUp, I've used Trello, I've used Notion, I've used a bunch of different things. And you know what? Each and every time I gravitate back towards the pen and paper. There's just too much distraction, I think, for me personally with apps. And this is just my foreword on apps, I guess. This is just me making my definitive statement. Try it out with the pen and paper. I know we're often centered around technology these days, and obviously rightly so. But there's something beautiful about just being able to write something down, and I think there's extra accountability because, like I said, once it enters this, man, it's really tough to go back and
It's
remember.
a distraction box,
It really
too.
is. It really is because, like, once you go put something in your phone, like first of all, you have to get to the app, and that's that's tough because like I'm looking right now, I already have a text message I gotta go read, right? So like then I'm gonna get distracted by that. Idea gone.
It's a distraction
right?
box.
Just write it down. Seriously, just write it down. You can set up these apps to do this exact thing: category, project, task, right?
Yeah.
But it takes extra time to get there.
It does.
And then you have to learn the app itself. Pen and paper, dude.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
And there's all
Pen
that
and paper.
discipline of once you get like of just fighting all the
Yeah, all the distractions. So I just kind of want to make a definitive statement on that. That I think each and every time I go back to the pen and paper, seriously.
Yeah.
Nothing like it. Nothing like it. So.
That being said, if the distraction is you see notification that we've released a new podcast episode, you can click on that still.
Yeah, that one's good.
It's not distraction.
We're
that's
not
a
biased
benefit.
at all.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. That's a good one to be distracted by. But I mean, you're learning. So there you go.
Yeah, it's kind of
It's a good one.
You can put this on in the background while you put all your projects down.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
You know,
that
passive way to learn while you're doing your tasks.
You know, when we talked about two birds, one stone.
There you go. Learn and get shit done. With all that being said, thank you for listening to this podcast episode. I feel like this is a good spot to kind of wrap this up. If your ideal project that you have is to get your songs mixed and mastered, a great thing you can do is contact Brandon. That's your next action step right there.
Oh, oh, thank you.
Go to Studio 222 Recording.
That's right.
.com and fill out a contact form. That is your next step.
That's right. That's a good one. That's a good one. I have another action step that you can take too. So if you're interested in getting your stuff mixed or mastered and you work in the folk, rock, what's the other one?
Acoustic and Blues.
Singer-songwriter as well.
Yeah.
You can go to Sean's website, swsrecordings.com, and also contact him there by filling out a quote request form, and he'll get back to you as soon as he humanly can. And guess what? You can also go to social media to contact us too individually, but we're not going to give you those because we don't look at those. And Sean, where else can we?
I don't even get why you bring it up.
I don't know either.
It's like you can go to do this.
It's a definitive
to let us know
because I want people to
we're
know
not gonna see.
like it exists, but like at the same time, I'm not going to tell you where it's at. So,
man,
I just have to because like it feels wrong not plugging socials.
If you do want to contact us on socials though, and something that we will see, you can contact us at the podcast.
I think I'm just gonna leave it at that from now.
Just contact us at the podcast.
I'm not gonna tease it.
You know, we've got TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. Any podcast platform you want. So if you found us on like TikTok or YouTube or whatnot, but you have like a different platform you use for your podcast, you can check us out there. All that at Music Makers Cookbook. That's where it is. At Music Makers Cookbook.
That's it. That's it.
So with all that being said,
Bon appetit.